Properties of solutions. So what is a solution? A solution is a homogeneous mixture that has at least two components. The major component is the solvent, and it's the major component by moles. The minor component is the solute, and you can have more than one solute. So in our bodies, water is the solvent. The solutes are the salts, the sugars, the gases, all sorts of other small molecules, nutrients. But our bodies, our cells, are full of a solution. Now, we don't always mean a liquid solution. When we're talking about biology, we do. In that case, the water is the solvent and the solutes are salts and other things. But a solution can be any homogeneous mixture. An example is air. Air is N2, O2, some argon, some CO2, and many other things present in very small amounts. But 78% of the nitrogen, or 78% of air is nitrogen gas. Oxygen gas is about 21%. And then we have 1% argon, carbon dioxide, and other. Right? But we consider nitrogen the solvent because it is the major component. If you make about 100 milliliters of solution by mixing 25 milliliters of ethyl alcohol, that's CH3, CH2OH, with 75 milliliters of water, H2O, or HOH, which substance is the solvent? That's right. Water is the solvent because it is the major component. Right, so by volume, 75% of this is water. Water is the solvent. So, there are many different types of common solutions. If you have a gas solute dissolved in a gas solution, well, air is an example of that. You can have a gas solute dissolved in a liquid. The solution overall will be liquid. Soft drinks have dissolved carbon dioxide gas. That's carbonation. You can take a liquid like ethylene glycol and dissolve it in a liquid like water and get a liquid solution. An example, or that's antifreeze. Or vodka. You take a liquid like ethanol and you dissolve it in water. If you take a solid like sodium chloride and you dissolve it in a liquid like water, you get a liquid solution. Salt water. You can take a gas and dissolve it in a solid. You can even have solid solutions. A solid solute in a solid solvent gives you a solid solution. Examples of this are like brass and other metal alloys. There are other types of mixtures that are not true solutions. So let's talk about what a true solution is. It is a homogeneous mixture of two or more components, and you can vary the ratios. You can increase or decrease either one. The dissolved solute is a molecule or ion, and it has a size that's less than 1 nanometer. That is smaller than the wavelength of visible light. If you have a solution that doesn't settle over time, or not actually a solution, a mixture that doesn't settle over time, but has particles that are larger than the wavelength of visible light, but still pretty small, that's what's called a colloid. And because the particles are greater than the wavelength of visible light, you get scattering of visible light, and you end up with a milky appearance. Milk is an example of a colloid. It's got big bubbles of fat and protein in a sugar water solution, and that's why it appears white. Solutions can be colored or colorless. Solutions usually allow light through unless the concentration is very, very high and they have some color. So, another thing is the solute does not precipitate over time, and the solution can be separated from the solvent by physical means. Evaporation is one example. If you have something that looks homogeneous but then settles over time, that's just called a suspension, right? So a colloid is in between a solution and a suspension. An example of a suspension is, if you've ever done any ceramics, the mixture of clay and water. If you let it sit for a while, the clay all settles to the bottom. Here we've got a beam of light shining through a solution on the left and a colloid on the right. You can see this scattering of light. You can see the path of the beam in the colloid. That's because the particles are bigger than the wavelength of light and they scatter. This is also the reason that sunsets are so beautiful. Suspended dust particles in the air scatter the sunlight, showing these beautiful pathways of sunlight.